All right, so we're back with Ganchar Enterprise, and we're doing our final segment of opening eyes to possibilities. And now we are backed by StreamYard, as you can see. So here we are moving forward. Just want to thank them for just allowing us to move in forward direction with their platform, and off we go. So a successful leader sees three different levels, and you're like, well, what levels are they talking about? Well, there's a perceptible level, and you're going to see how we're going to just go into these in a little bit more detail. But you have to be able to understand where things are at. What does the current situation and circumstances and the environment and the culture look like? And then all the internal threats per se. Then there's the probable. And then what is that? That's actually like looking in a discernment way. So what you're going to be able to see is when we're going to move into this, is you're going to see how things are going to be actually going. Well, this is where we're at. This is what we need to kind of do in order to make a successful outcome. What does that outcome look like? You need to have discernment. So that's what this is all about. Then you have possible level. This is when you're thinking about, if I'm here and we need to be there, what does the future look like? You have to have a vision. You have to have the motivation, determination, and discipline in order to actually achieve things in such a way in circumstances that you might feel overwhelmed and the world might be against you. However, with all being said and done, this is something that can easily be achieved, okay? But you have to be able to always stay ahead of the game and continue to push forward and move on and etc. So then after that, we're going to go into closing thoughts, and then we're going to be going into a different series after this. So the perceptible level, you're like, well, where does it all start? Well, this is the current state of what is currently happening, the reality. You got to be listening at this level. You have to be able to understand what is exactly occurring in order to understand what is actually having the required dealings to be dealt with. Okay, it's just the way how that has to happen. So what does this look like? Doing whatever it takes to make sure that you're able to get the attention, as you can see, of someone that is just willing to speak. You got to be able to at least build that much of a relationship. So if they're able to open up and then say, okay, this is what I want to achieve, this is what it looks like, this is how it's going to look like, this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, then this is what's going to happen in moving forward. So with that being said, you also have, on many occasions, leaders who don't listen will tend to have their current reality implode on them. This is a factor, a large one, to be honest, why so many companies struggle in the sense of culture and flexibility. And sometimes it's really unfortunate to say, but this could actually cost them a large amount of expansion. I've seen many times when you think companies and organizations are really moving forward and they're always going to be continuing to doing something in a forward-thinking way, then all of a sudden to realize what's happening is that they're actually moving backwards. And so if they're moving backwards, what ends up happening is that by the time they're faced with that reality that they're like, okay, we got to change, they're actually imploded. They're done. So never underestimate the power of listening and understanding to people's questions, comments, concerns. And if they're even willing to give you certain things as far as suggestions, ideas, and then really even like share their vision, just listen, because you never know what could happen. So the probable level, this is when discernment is at its most heightened level. And the level of discernment is basically determined on the leader. So if the leader needs to find a way to make a very true and authentic experience, their discernment level has to be at an extremely heightened level so that they're able to really understand and see all the moving parts and components that are happening. Because if they're not, they could actually make a very, very large mistake that could cost them substantially. So thinking that you're moving in a forward direction, but if you're not actually truly authentic to yourself and not understand what you're about as a leader and where your vision is and where you want to be going, I've seen this firsthand. I've experienced this firsthand when you've seen all of these moving parts coming and they're just really in Unfortunately, putting the pressure on and people are not able to handle that type of pressure, it causes a very unfortunate situation. And what is that situation? They implode. And I've seen this in the oil and gas industry too many times. It's like a cycle every 4 years of hardships, 2 years of great times. And then those that are able to hold on for the 4 years of just rough times, then they're able to grow and expand on that second cycle. But it's very difficult to try and find yourself and grab onto a cycle. So that's even from my own self learnings, to be honest. Not having together, oh man, not having this together will cost a great price in morale, culture, and the autonomy within an organization. So that basically just means how people, the chemistry, and the relationships that are happening. You're going to see many moving parts come together, and are they actually going to mesh together, or are they going to explode, or are they just going to go all over the place in the sense of just in their own direction, and there's not even going to be any contact? That's going to be a very cold and excruciating, painful experience to have anyone work in that type of environment. However, with all of those types of considerations and factors considered, that doesn't mean that it's too late. It just means that there's going to have to be a lot of restructuring, revamping, and that could mean just a lot of mentoring and coaching and guidance, really, by the right people that are really chosen to do this, because it takes a certain type of person to lead in a very difficult situation or circumstance, especially if you had a leader who was very toxic and that was actually imploding an organization. I've stepped into roles on a few occasions, more than a few times actually, where everything just seemed to be falling apart within that organization. They put me into, I would say, a middle management level position, and it didn't take much. All you had to do is basically doing what these, points are saying. Just listening to people's concerns, understanding what is it that they actually need. Never mind their wants, but what do they need? Do they just need to be heard? Do they just need to be listened to? Do they just need to be acknowledged sometimes? Hey, I really appreciate how you help me out. You're really doing something that's actually very valuable here, and I could have done this without you. Just sometimes it takes those little things of acknowledgement and appreciation and just showing a bit of gratitude that allows greater opportunities to eventually come full circle around. And the reason being is because what ends up happening is something very simple. When you're able to achieve these things and address them, great things are soon to follow. It is inevitable. Great things will follow when basically things are properly taken care of in house. So, the possible level, you're thinking, well, what is this all about? Well, see, here's the thing. When you're trying to envision something, and I put intentionally in here an elderly couple, and you're like, well, what are they actually like talking about? See, sometimes people think, well, it's very difficult for someone who is really having on the experience, and they're not so aware of, you know, the moving parts of today. They're actually behind, they're ancient. These people can actually be potentially your greatest asset depending on their willingness to adapt. Some are easier than others, but I'm not going to say one way or another that they are or are not, because the fact of the matter is that our society is changing at such a rapid rate, at such a rapid speed, that those that are actually able to understand this and see this are the ones that that you want to keep. And the reason being is because if you don't actually want to keep them, then you see exactly what's about to happen. Those ones that don't want to actually adjust, they're going to be left behind anyway. So having those people who are willing to adapt and adjust, doesn't matter where they're at. If they're near retirement, they could be your greatest asset, because they could say, well, from what we've had over here for so many years and all of these other moving components, they will still have a factor in what is to play in achieving certain outcomes when you're addressing these following pain points. So This is where the vision is actually created, and the leader must maintain to stay ahead of what is required for the vision. Because if you don't have someone that is able to actually understand those pain points, you're not going to be able to have someone who's actually able to achieve the solutions, the ideal outcomes of what it is actually going to take in order to have the ideal vision, not just be a vision, but be a reality. This can essentially be the start of what is the downfall or the downward fall, not being able to find better ways to be in a competitive market that they are in. Well, literally within 3 to 5 years, it's actually quite prominent now. It's not just a pie in the sky, wishful thinking type of a thing. It is a reality thing, and I'm actually seeing this firsthand. Companies that are actually imploding because they're not willing to adjust to the current technology tools that are readily available. So, with everything else coming ahead, it's not hard to actually see what is to come. So, with that, if you're willing to adapt and change and see the vision and personally develop and continuously grow in what does this look like, then you're able to achieve great things. This is not just something that's going to be, well, I think it will. I hope so. No, this is an absolute guarantee. Because if you're investing in yourself, it is not if, it's just a matter of when things start to happen for you. So here's some closing thoughts on this whole opening eyes uh, series. So take for an example the power of anyone with a vision, and they believe this with such great passion that they are not only believing or they believe in the vision itself, but they can actually live in the vision within their mind to the extent of making it a reality within their mind. So what happens is if you ever heard of someone who actually said, I actually envisioned this happening years ago, or this was my passion and desire of this actually being able to be achieved, and then it actually is, that's what this is actually about. Okay, many times you hear people in this great areas of distress, taking a concentration camp for an example, or a prisoner of war, and all of a sudden you hear them saying years later that, I actually didn't give up because I honestly believed that some way or how I would be in a position or in a position of opportunity where I'm able to capitalize and share my story. So why would I want to share my story? Well, because I'm sure it'd be impactful for somebody else. That next person would be very, how would you say, not just impacted, but empowered, educated, empowered, and just enthusiastic and about what's to come next, you see? So this works when you're able to feel the emotions, know the smells, understand the energy within the place that the vision is happening in. And that way you're able to not only just think it, but you're actually able to live it. So when you actually take all of these into account, this is not something to be overlooked, but embraced. As I've actually experienced this firsthand, where everything's created twice, first in the mind and then in reality. The place that I live, I thought of it 10 years before I moved into it that I was actually going to live in there. And I understood without a shadow of it. I'm like, I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know when, I don't know. This is all going to happen. And I didn't even see the front of the house. I was able to see the back of the house. But seeing the back of the house was just enough for me to just, I'm like, I know I'm going to live there. And here I am living in that house. So when you look at, just going to go back here with the, I went a little bit too far. Just got to go right back to my, let's see, here we go again. And let's see where we're at. This is pretty wild. All right. Work with me. We're going to swap it and share the screen, the window. And so next week, we're going to talk about, believe it or not, the price tag of leadership. And it's all going to start with discipline. So that's part one. So don't ever think that it's just going to kind of come easy and be like, oh, yeah, whatever. Don't have to worry about nothing. No, there's going to be a lot of hardships coming your way, especially when you want to step and rise amongst those that are among you. So we'll be back 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern next week. Remember to work hard and stay humble. Until next time.